I want to talk about retiring in Asia, and I'll base it around this article that I saw that says the best places for expats to retire in Asia. I've spent most of the last 28 years in Asia, and I've been to most, if not all, of the places that I'll be talking about. I've certainly spent a long time in all of those countries. They've got 5 countries here: Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, and Vietnam. And I mainly want to talk about whether it's a good place to retire, whether you'll enjoy it and it's pleasant. I'll also go into visas and how much it costs, the quality of life, whether it's safe, how the food is, whether there are other expats, and about property as well. But mainly I just want to look at whether it is a nice place to live. So the first place I'll start with is Malaysia. Malaysia is a pretty safe country. There are several places by the sea that you could retire to. The visa, they do a retirement visa, and you need about, here it says you need $2,300 a month, as well as assets as well. So I won't go too much into that, but it seems quite a lot to me. It's a fairly cheap country to go to. The quality of life, it depends where you are. Now, there are really 3 places that you might want to retire to. The first one is Kuala Lumpur. So let's look at some images first. It's a fairly modern city, but to me, it's a city. There are things to do and it's entertaining, but you're still living in a city. And to me, that would be out straight away. Why would you want to live in a city? As cities go, it's okay, but I could spend 3 or 4 days there and then that's it. And I've been there so many times that now I just go as short as possible. Another place that they talk about is Penang. And this is where they recommend to retire to. And I don't see why. It's an island. It's got some beaches, but they're not the best beaches. And it's quite an industrial place. One half of the island is industrial. You've got an old town called Georgetown, but it's fairly small. There's some things to see there, but not so much. And I just don't get the feel that it's an exciting tourist place to live. You can go up in a cable car up to the top of the mountain, which is good to do. So it's quite good for a holiday. You could spend a week there and it's okay. But to me, it wouldn't be a place that I'd want to retire to. The other place that maybe you could retire to is Langkawi. It's got nice beaches and fairly big island. I'm not sure the exact size. I'd probably guess it's 20 kilometers across. I've been right round the island and it's okay, but it's actually got a lot of resorts rather than an actual feel. It's as though it was an empty island and they've bunged a lot of resorts onto it to make it nice, and these resorts are pleasant. But outside of these resorts, there's not that much to see. They've got a cable car that goes up to the top of one of these mountains. But I actually think you'd run out of things to do. You could probably go off onto some of these other islands, which would be okay. And if you're actually not looking at doing too much, then maybe this is an island for you. This is probably the only place in Malaysia that I'd actually say you might want to retire to. But you might get bored, that's the only thing. So looking at other things about Malaysia, you've got the food. I'm not that keen on the food if you get it off the street or you try and go for cheap food in expensive restaurants or more expensive than the average person would pay there. Then you can get good food, you can get the seafood and things like that. But for street food, I don't really recommend it that much. There are lots of expats, and a good thing is that most Malaysians speak some English. So it's easy to get around and talk to other people. I can't really comment on property because I've never looked at buying property there. But for renting, I think it's probably okay because the hotels, even in Kuala Lumpur, the hotels are pretty cheap. And on the islands, the hotels are okay. So going by that, I imagine that the property to either rent or to buy will be okay. Probably just a few $100s a month. For me, the most important thing about somewhere to either retire or to live for a long time is the fun factor and having lots of things to do. And for me, Malaysia doesn't have that. It's reasonable if you're living in a place in the West and it's a kind of boring area, then probably Malaysia would seem that it's quite fun. But I think the other places are much better. Thailand for sure has a lot more things going on. And the Philippines also, I would say, is more fun. Let's move on to the second country that they talk about, and that's Thailand. And I would put that first because there are so many places in Thailand that you can retire to. I like the weather. It's not as humid as Malaysia. Because Malaysia is nearer the equator, it gets a lot more humid and more rain. Whereas Thailand, especially in the north, can actually be quite cool at times. For the visa, they've got some amounts here, but I don't think that's up to date. If I look at the up-to-date one, then it's 800,000 baht that you need in a bank account. I think you have to keep it for 3 months in that account before you can apply for the retirement visa. And another alternative is if you've got money coming in per month, then that's okay also. So it's about $25,000 to $30,000. If we look at expenses, it's probably similar to Malaysia. I got a room in Phuket for 6,000 baht a month, which is about $200. But there are cheaper areas and also more expensive areas. The quality of life is really good. You can live by the beach. It's sunny most of the year, and even in the rainy season, it's still pretty good. It's easy to get around. You can have your own transport, either a motorbike or a car. You can travel around Thailand or just travel around any area. The roads are really good, and the only negative there is it can be dangerous if you're on a motorbike. There are a lot of accidents. The safety is good. I think Thailand is as safe as England, and I actually feel safer in Thailand than I do if I went to London. There are lots of expats everywhere. Even in remote parts of Thailand, you'll still find people living there from other countries. So there are plenty of people to talk to. The only thing I would say negative is that most Thai people don't really speak English, so it's not as easy if you're outside of the tourist areas. You can't buy property except for a condo, but even that I wouldn't really do because the problem is the governments change quite often and the rules change a lot. So you might get stuck and find that you've put money into something and lost it. So I actually wouldn't do it. But renting is fine, and that's all I've ever done is to rent in Thailand. The food is great. Not only is Thai food good, but you can get food from any country. And in Phuket especially, you can get Italian food, French food, Lebanese food, American food, English food, just anything that you want. Korean, Japanese, you've got restaurants for all of it. Let's look at the country on Google Maps, and then I'll go through each place in turn. So you've got the north up here, which is the hills. Not really mountains, just a lot of hills. You've got the east over here towards Cambodia, fairly flat. There's some hills in the middle here, but this is fairly flat. You do get some foreigners living here. You've got Bangkok, which is a big city. You've got Pattaya here, which is a big tourist area. This is the place where you've got most go-go bars. But you do actually get a lot of retirees here and even couples. I was going to say earlier that Thailand is more of a man's world than a woman's world. But this is only in certain areas. You've got areas that kind of have all these go-go bars and lots of nightlife. But outside those areas, then it's okay. You can live on islands and it's fairly mixed. I know women that have retired there and couples that live there, and it's not really a problem. So you've got Pattaya here. That's a big nightlife area. And you've got some islands further east. You've got a set of islands here that are very popular. Koh Samui, Koh Tao, Koh Phangan. And you've also got a big area here. You've got Krabi, which is good. You've got Phuket. And then up this coast, you've got Khao Lak. So let's look at them in turn, and let's take Chiang Mai first. I think this is okay because it's a cheaper place to live. The city is quite busy. Let's look at some pictures here. It's like this. It's quite hilly. So it's nice once you get outside of Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai is fairly busy. And I've spend time there, but I prefer outside of Chiang Mai, and it can be quite pleasant in these hills. It's probably one of the cheapest places to live in Thailand, and of course you can get all the food. There's entertainment in Chiang Mai and things to do around that area. So the second place to look at is Bangkok, and to me it's a city, so it doesn't interest me whatsoever, but you do get a lot of expats there and people who retire there. It's pretty easy to get around. There are lots of things to do. The food is great and there's lots of entertainment. So if that's what you're after, then it's a good place to live, and probably the best city out of all these countries that I'm talking about. There's lots of good nightlife and also good things to do during the day. The next one is Pattaya, and it's about 2 hours southeast of Bangkok. So let's have a look at some pictures of that. It really is a nightlife place with lots of things to do at night, but actually during the day it's okay as well. There are some beaches. They're not as good as the beaches down south, but they're okay. Pattaya's spread out quite a bit. It used to be just Pattaya City, but now Jomtien is really busy, which is down here. And the foreign community really has spread out back here. You've got some lakes and even hotels out in the back here. They're not by the sea, but then you've got more land, and I'm pretty sure you've got a lot of golf courses around here as well. So that might be a good place to live. If we look at the pictures, then this is Pattaya City from up on a hill that's nearby. You can see it's really busy there, and this is sort of the nightlife area here. You've also got some beaches. Let's see if I can see Jomtien. This is probably just north of Pattaya, I think, and same here. So you have got some beaches. The other good thing is you can go about 2 hours further and you've got these islands down here. You've got Koh Samui and Koh Chang over here. So you've got some islands that you can get to as well. Let's go to the next place, and this is Koh Samui over here. You can fly in, but they've got ferries from the mainland as well. I don't know if we can see the size. Maybe it's about 15 kilometers across, so you can actually go round it in a day. And to me, that's the problem with it, is that you can see everything in one day. So if you were actually to retire here, if you find a nice place that you're happy with, it's okay. But if you want to go off exploring, then you're a bit limited. You can go over to these other islands like Koh Tao, Koh Phangan, and see those, but you're kind of limited to where you can go to. It is a nice place. Let's have a look at some pictures. It does look good. I think this one's Koh Tao, and then this will probably be Koh Samui here. So it's got some nice beaches. But like I say, it's a bit limited to where you can go out to. But if you're happy to just stay around that area, then you probably would like this. So the places that I really think are better for retiring are Phuket, Krabi, or up here, Khao Lak. Can't actually see where it is on here, but it's around this area here. And the good thing is that these are all fairly near each other, so you can actually go over to the different ones, and they've got a lot of islands going down here. You've got Koh Lanta as well, and then some other ones down here. It's actually not far from Langkawi. Langkawi's here, that's in Malaysia, and that's what I spoke about earlier. So the good things about living in this area: first, you can fly into Phuket or fly into Krabi, and that's quite easy. It takes about an hour to get to the south of the island, and this is the place that I really like. This is where I spend most of my time. You've got lots of beaches. It's fairly natural still, not so built up. And there's still plenty of things to do as well. So it's a nice life here. It gets busier as you go up. So Patong is really busy. And then actually up here is not so busy. So the busiest area really here is Patong. But some people live further inside. You've got some golf courses here. And you've got Katu, where some people live as well, some expats. But you've got plenty of accommodation and places to rent all the way up this coast. This is the really nice coast, and it's cheaper. If you want to save some money, you can live over here. A lot of people are moving to this area over here. It's fairly quiet, and there are a lot of new places that are being built. The good thing about Phuket is you can get to other places. You can take ferries across here to Yau Yai, to Krabi, or even down here to Koh Phi Phi. You can also drive up, and I did this about probably a month or 2 months ago. I drove up here, went to Khao Lak, then went up to this national park, which is really beautiful, and spent a few days there. So you can do that. And it's just got so many expats here that you can always find people to talk to and other people that are doing similar things to you. There are lots of clubs and lots of social events. If Phuket is too busy for you, then you could go to Khao Lak, which is up here. And that's a quieter place, but still a lot of expats there. Or to Krabi over here. There's some great islands that you can go out to from Krabi that are really beautiful, really white sandy beaches. And this area has a lot of expats living in it. Another place would be Koh Lanta. So actually, out of all of Asia, if you're looking for somewhere to go, I probably would go into Phuket, go to the south, see if you like that part. Go up here to Khao Lak, go over to Krabi and down to Koh Lanta, and just see if you like that area first before trying the other places. If you prefer outside of the beaches, a bit cooler, and the hills, then I probably would try Chiang Mai up here rather than the other countries. So here's some images of those islands like Phuket that are down south. This is Rawai, which is the south part of Phuket, where I like. Especially here, which is Nai Han, this area. Here's Krabi, which is really beautiful. And here's Khao Lak, which is further up and on the west coast. The third place in this article is Cambodia. And I first went there in 1990, and I've been there several times since. I like Cambodia. It's really friendly, and it's got a lot of countryside. So once you get out of the city, it's really nice. There are 3 places. The first one is Siem Reap, which here's the town. It's quite busy. This is the main part of the town, which is quite bustling and got a lot of restaurants and little shops. But it is actually quite spread out going towards Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat's about maybe 10 kilometers away. Once you get into the countryside, it's really nice. Here's some pictures of the countryside. And what I always remember about it was these lollipop palm trees that make it unique. Another place would be Phnom Penh. I'm not into cities, so I really wouldn't want to retire there whatsoever. But it is quite a bustling city, up and coming. They've got a few high-rise places. And you've got a lot of life around the river. You've got some temples there, then some bars and some restaurants. And quite a good nightlife going on. It's a fairly dirty city, and especially along that river, it's not so clean. But it's okay. I just wouldn't want to stay in a city anyway. The other place you might want to consider is Sihanoukville. There's about 5 beaches around there, a bit of a holiday place, and they've started building a lot of condos. I think it's Chinese investors that have come in to do that. So it's fairly up and coming, and they've also got some islands that you can go out to that are nearby. People say it's not safe at night, but I found it okay. I stayed there about 2 weeks, I think it was, and it was okay. And it's friendly, it's a beach atmosphere, but it is a bit isolated. It's not really near anywhere else. To get there, we took a train from Phnom Penh, but I think it's actually better to fly in. There are plenty of expats in Cambodia, either in Siem Reap, in Phnom Penh, or in Sihanoukville, and the food is pretty good, so those are okay. The medical treatment is not good. People fly over to Thailand to get any serious medical treatment done. The real good thing about Cambodia is the visa situation. You can get a tourist visa or a business visa. I think both of those are 3 months, if I remember rightly, but you can extend a business visa up to a year for about $180. It's one of the few places in Asia where I see a lot of foreigners working. Because you can get a business visa and you can actually work there, I see foreigners with restaurants and even with food places that are just on the street. So it's a good place. If you need to work, then it's a good place to go. The food is pretty good. I don't remember anything that I didn't like about the food, but obviously not as good as Thailand. I just think Thailand is the best place in Asia for food. The accommodation is cheap. The hotels are cheap. And I assume it will be cheap to rent a place, and that's what I read on the internet. The fourth place to look at is the Philippines, and I had an export business there for about 13 years. I also travelled all over. Let's look at it on a map. I'm actually here at the moment in Dalat in Vietnam. It's up in the mountains, and actually I'm freezing cold because it's in the mountains. I was coming here to look at what place I could live, and I'm kind of going to give up on that. I'm going to go over to the Philippines and look at a few other places and see what I think. But I'll talk about my experience of it. It's got a lot of islands. There's actually more than 7,000 islands. And if you just do a search of Philippine beaches, you can see that the beaches are so much better than the rest of Asia. I would say that this is the best country for beaches. Most of the beaches are down here in the Visayas, which are over here. And you've also got some really nice places in Palawan and Duvall I haven't been to, but I'll probably go there in the next couple of weeks. Let's go through each thing and the good and the bad. For visas, you used to get 21 days when you arrived as a tourist, but I understand now you get 30 days and you can keep extending it, I think, for about 60 days at a time. That's pretty easy. But in this article, they say there's also a retiree's visa that you can get. So it sounds like that's pretty easy as well. The next thing is the weather. And the problem is that you've got the rainy season, but you've also got a typhoon season. I would say probably going from November round until, say, April or May, it's pretty good. Then you start to get a rainy season, which doesn't mean it rains all the time, but it just rains some of the time. And then later on in the year, you get typhoons, which again also don't affect everywhere at the same time. But when they come in, you know that one's hit. The quality of life there is pretty good. Now, one good thing is that they speak English, and the education from high school and above is in English. So you've got some well-educated Filipinos, and that makes it good. You've also got a lot of expats who live there, so a lot of people that you can make friends with. It tends to be more American rather than European because the Philippines is to the east of Asia, if you have a look here. So it's actually nearer to America. And also because it was run by the Americans for a certain amount of time, they took over from the Spanish. So you've got a bit of Spanish influence in some of the buildings, and then a lot of American influence as well. And you've got a lot of American retirees here, compared with Thailand, where you've got a lot of European retirees. If we look at some other things, the transport getting around is quite difficult. You've got lots of islands, so you need to get ferries or planes between them. And the roads aren't so great. The government is not as good as the other governments around, so they haven't spent the money on the infrastructure. So it is quite difficult to get around. And that's one of the things that I didn't like. I used to live up in Angeles, which is above Manila, and it was quite difficult to go anywhere from there. The food I'm not keen on. It's okay in some places if it's quite foreigner influence. So Manila is fine. Up in Angeles or Clark, up north of Manila, is okay. And by the beaches, you can get seafood, but it's still just not as good as Thailand. You can't own property, but it's okay to rent it. The hotels aren't as cheap as Thailand for sure, and the quality is not as good. So that might have some effect on whether you prefer to live in the Philippines or somewhere like Thailand. If we look at the places that you could go, then you've got Angeles City, which is here. It's a city, but not as big as Manila at all. And you've got Clark Air Base, which is a bit spread out. You can actually live on Clark Air Base if you like, or stay there in hotels. There's quite a good nightlife around there. Lots of bars and go-go bars, things like that, but also good music. And I quite like the music in the Philippines. It's one of the good things about it. Another place you could go is Subic here. This is also an old American air base. So you've got, I think it's called Subic Bay Development Center, something like that. And they keep it quite well. So the security is pretty good. The safety is pretty good. And you've got some beaches around there. Now, the beaches are not as good as down south. If we just cover Manila first, I just find that an awful city. I never used to like going there, and I can't even imagine what it's like now. It's pretty built up. The transport is not good, and it's a dirty city. You used to be able to see the smog. You could see a line of smog, like smoke, as you approach the city. Some people say that over here in Laguna is pretty good. You've got a big lake, and you've got some places around here. So some people say that this is a place that you could stay. I used to go somewhere here, Morong, some of the time, and it's okay, but it kind of closes down about 9 o'clock in the evening. So it's not a place I'd want to live. Going down, you've got a place, Puerto Galera. I'm thinking about going here in the next few weeks because I used to like it. I haven't been there for over 20 years, but I used to like this area. And it's got a lot of foreigners living there, so a place that you could retire to. It's been built further back here, and it seems like you can get around here more as well. So looks like some new beaches, but it's good for diving. It's very scenic, especially when you come into Puerto Galera. It's really scenic and quite a nice place. I did read that somebody didn't like it. They said it's too built up now around Sabang. But there's plenty more places here, so I might have a look at that. Let's look at some other places that might be good for retiring. They talk about Duvall City. I've never been there, but because it used to be under strict control, the president now used to run Duvall City, and he's really strict. So it was a very safe place, and I understand that it's still very safe and very clean. There's also an island here that you can go to, which is supposed to be really nice. There are a lot of places in Mindanao that you can't go, from what I understand, especially down here on these islands, that it's quite dangerous. But from what I understand, Duvall City is fine. And I actually watched a video of someone who lived, I think it was somewhere up here north of Duvall, and they also said it was fine, that it was safe. So it's just worth checking out the different places. One good thing about Duvall is because it's not such a tourist place, it is very cheap. In the middle of Manila and this area, this is called Luzon, and Duvall, you've got a lot of islands, and these are called the Visayas. I did a trip where I went right down here through all of these and then back up again. And they're really beautiful with some fantastic beaches and really some nice places to either stay or live or visit. But it is difficult to travel. It's difficult to get around. I'm not sure exactly. The main airport here is Cebu. I'm not sure if there's an airport on Negros. There is an airport here, Kalibo. And in Bohol, there's one, maybe around here somewhere. So there are some airports, but not everywhere. So some of these you have to travel by road to get there. And the roads aren't great. And once you go through towns, the towns are always busy and always traffic jams everywhere. They're just not as good as Thailand. So having said that, there's some really nice places. And you actually get people staying everywhere. There was a video I watched also about a guy who was living here somewhere. I remember when I went through Negros, I didn't see any foreigners at all. And then over here, I met an Australian that was living there. So there are definitely people who retire here. And this one guy who was retired in Mindanao, said it was costing him, I think it was $90 a month for a 2-bedroom house. So it's really cheap. I think the gas and then the internet and things came to about the same amount, and the food was also about the same amount. So really living cheaply. He said for $500 then you can live really well. So let's just look at a couple of other places here that you could retire to. You've got Cebu City, and that's quite busy, but you've got this island, Mactan Island, that is a development area. So people live here, and this is a lot more modern. You've also got the airport, which is on the island here. So that's worth looking at. It's got a few islands. I went up to a place up here in Bantayan. This was about 20 years ago, and a friend of a friend was living there. And so there were foreigners here. He was English, and he was living up in Bantayan. There's also people who live over here in Mobile somewhere, and it's a diving area. I'm not sure exactly where it is. Here, Mobile, and that's a diving area. So you've got people living there. So lots of people living on all of these, and an up-and-coming place is over in Palawan. So this is Palawan. You've got 3 places here. You've got Coron, which is really beautiful but very quiet. You've got these kind of mountains that come out of the sea and looks very beautiful. That's Coron. You've got El Nido. I went there again probably 20 years ago, and you've got the same kind of scenery, and that's becoming more and more built up. You've actually got an airport there as well, so you can fly in. And you've got Puerto Princesa, which is the capital, and that's more cosmopolitan. There's foreigners living there as well. I saw a video about a guy who lives there. What he said is that there's a lot of beaches around as well that you can go to nearby. So that's the Philippines, and you've got to be a little bit more adventurous if you want to go there. It's not as safe as Thailand. I would say the beaches are more beautiful. It probably can be cheaper than Thailand, but the food isn't as good, and it's more difficult to get around. So it's kind of, some things are better and some things are not as good. But certainly if you're the adventurous type, and especially because they speak English, then it's worth thinking about. Let's just look at some images of El Nido that I said is quite an up-and-coming place. And these are the islands I'm talking about. You get these on Coron, El Nido, and I'm not sure if they go down as far as Puerto Princesa, but it is pretty and a nice place to go. And it's definitely a tourist destination that's up and coming. So the last place to look at is Vietnam. And I came over here this time to look and see if there's places that I'd like to live. I went into Ho Chi Minh, if you can see it's down here. And I've flown up to Dalat, which is up in the hills or mountains. Now, Ho Chi Minh, I just found it so busy. I didn't like it. Just nothing there for me. A big, overcrowded and just horrible city to be in. Some younger people have said they lived there. I've seen videos of that. But for me, it's just not a kind of place I'd want to live. So I came up to Dalat and I thought that, it might be quite nice up here. But it's just too cold and it's boring. If you look at the pictures, then it looks quite nice. You've got countryside around and a nice big lake. But once you've walked around the lake a couple of times, there's not much to do. I went out last night, and in total, in the daytime and evening, I walked 15 kilometers yesterday, and I just didn't find anything to do. I couldn't really even find the center of the town. It seems to be spread out, and there's some different areas. And there were about 2 bars that had some music playing and a market. And other than that, nothing to do. And it's the only place I've actually ever seen where in the restaurants people wear coats. And there was even a guy with some earmuffs on. So it's freezing cold in the restaurants. I'm going to get out of here. I booked for 5 days and I'm probably going to leave early, maybe in the next day or 2. I was thinking of going down to Nha Trang from here. You can get a bus or you can hire a taxi and go down. But it says that the road is a bit dangerous and I just don't fancy that. So I'm probably going to fly back to Ho Chi Minh and then leave. I've been to a few places. I've actually been to Nha Trang, but it was a long time ago and it's supposed to have changed a lot. Last year I went to Da Nang and to Hoi An, which are up here. I didn't really like Da Nang. It's a city, and although it's got beaches, it just wasn't really a place for foreigners. But Hoi An was really nice. Let's look at some pictures of it. And you can see it's an old town, so very historical. I found it really friendly. It was sunny, and it's actually funny that it was sunny when other places around the area are not. So when it's raining in other places, this is actually sunny because it's protected by the mountains. It was pretty cheap, and I was in a nice place. The hotel had a balcony that overlooked the swimming pool and then some trees behind, and it was really cheap as well. I think about $15 a night, paying by the night. There were quite a few foreigners there, probably just as tourists. I've not actually ever heard of anyone retiring to Vietnam, so I don't know many details about it. If we go through the different things then, so the visa, you get 3 months as a tourist visa, and I don't think they do a retirement visa, but it says you can extend that again and again. The weather is pretty good, it's pretty cheap. The beaches are not as good as Thailand or the Philippines. You've got beaches along this coast, but it's not the same. I think there's an island down in the south, this one here, Phuket, which is supposed to be pretty good, have good beaches, but I read that it's a bit of a building site, so it doesn't appeal to me. I was thinking of going there and then change my mind. The food, I've heard people say that the food's as good as Thailand, but for me it's not. I just don't see it. I don't see that good food here. And the safety, yes, I think it's really friendly, really safe, and maybe not the motorbikes, but the actual people, I've had no problems whatsoever. Everyone's really friendly. People say hello when you're walking along the street here. I don't see many expats, and I imagine that it's difficult to buy property because you can't even ride a motorbike or drive a car without getting a Vietnamese license. You can't do it on a foreign license. So I doubt very much that you can buy property here. I find it more of a business place, and it is quite an up-and-coming business place, but not so much as a tourist place. I think it's more a business place that just has a few tourist places as well. So that's the list, the 5 places. I would say Thailand is the best, the Philippines the second, and Cambodia the third. That's the way I would look at it. But please give your opinion. If you've got an opinion, please put it down below. And if you disagree, then please put the comments down there so that other people can see that.